Hi, I'm Kathy Lynch, Executive Director at Easthampton Media, and I'm here today with Chris Lindahl from the Hampshire Gazette, and we're here to give you, Easthampton, your year in review. Chris, thanks for coming into the station today.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy.
It's great. We were talking about doing this for a while, and I'm glad we're finally pulling it off.
Me too. It took a little while, but better late than never.
So 2015 was a busy year in Easthampton. We saw a lot of changes and additions, and I just wanted to ask Chris, do you have any comments about 2015? You just started covering the Easthampton beat about 18 months ago. What are your impressions as the newcomer?
Well, I think 2015 was a great year to start in Easthampton, especially because the boardwalk opened, and I think that probably was one of the biggest stories of the year. Really kind of it's an anchor for downtown, and it serves as kind of a gathering point for everyone in Easthampton to go out and enjoy Nashawanek Pond and maybe get some ice cream at Mount Tom's, enjoy the view.
And I should say that I came to this community in 1997 in sort of a different form of my current position here, and there was some talk about, wouldn't it be great if there was a boardwalk? And so for me, it's really nice, it's really interesting too to see the progression and how the pond steering committee worked really hard to get all the information to get a dredge done and to get the community motivated and to find the grant source funding to put in a boardwalk. So what I think is super cool about 2015 is seeing the fruition of ideas from the idea stage to implementation.
Absolutely, and I think when I wrote a story about the boardwalk opening, I talked to former Mayor Mike Totznick, and what struck me was that he told me that initially there was kind of some opposition to building a boardwalk, and it did take some time to really get people rallied up behind the idea. And now, I mean, I haven't heard anything but great things from people in Easthampton about the boardwalk. They really love it.
So congratulations to Easthampton opening up the boardwalk to Nashawanek Pond, and it really puts the pond back into the center, literally the center of the community that you can now access and have lunch there and all that stuff. It was always in the center of the community, but it wasn't really a community center until now.
And it's interesting to me too that it was created for the mills, and as we've seen all the mills become reused in various commercial or other applications. Now it's kind of interesting to see how the pond's been reused too, kind of coming full circle in a way of Easthampton's new life.
I think it's interesting that it started off, the building of that pond created this economic engine of the mills, and now it feels like a perfect Yankee reuse, to not just reuse the pond as something beautiful, but also the hope is to make it the economic engine for the center of downtown, because it is an incredible, beautiful resource.
Absolutely.
So let's hope that comes to fruition too. So what else happened in 2015?
Well, ECA Plus kind of continued chugging along. They put on quite a few really impressive art walks. One that I can remember that was really amazing was sometime over the summer there was stilt walkers, and it was part of a traffic calming project that was kind of designed to make people slow down a little bit as they're heading through Union Street. And what better to slow people down than people, 10 feet up off the ground on stilts in colorful costumes. Definitely think it worked to calm traffic, turn some heads, and it was a really interesting art project to boot.
I think also, just following up, that was a very cool art walk, but I think that ECA has done a ton of very cool art walks, not just focusing on what's going on outside, but we participated in Book Fest this year in April, and I guess they're doing another one coming up for 2016, and that was amazing too. And I got to meet so many really interesting people and see how they sort of circulate in the valley in the children's book Authorland. Did you get to experience any of that?
I didn't get a chance to go to Book Fest, but I know that it was really popular, and I think that's the great thing about ECA Plus is, yeah, they have these monthly art walks, but you do get these bigger events like Cultural Chaos or Book Fest that really seems to draw a lot of people from the valley all over, and it's a great place to meet new friends and see what's going on in the valley, especially with the creative fields.
Speaking of Cultural Chaos, which is a big thing that ECA Plus does this year at Cultural Chaos, we lost a very important community member, Deborah Totznick, passed away in a kind of freak accident in falling down some stairs. Of course, so many people in the community knew her as a longtime partner and wife of our longtime mayor, Michael Tautznick. But beyond that, Deborah was really an artist in her own right and did tons of volunteer work.
Yeah, I never got the opportunity to meet her, which is really too bad. But it was really, really nice to see just how much support for Deborah and Mike came after she died. I mean, the community really, really came together. There was a memorial service at Eastworks. There's an effort now to get the boardwalk named after Deborah and Mike Tautznick. You know, people really want to remember her for the work that she did for this community, and I think that she will be remembered because people seem to really want to preserve that.
And I think that that would, on a personal level, I think that that would be a really beautiful gesture from the community to the Tautznick family, who has dedicated a good portion of their lives to, I mean, you know, Mike Tautznick obviously being a mayor, but before that, dedicated a large portion of their life to public service, fighting for things like the environment, you know, advocating for people who couldn't advocate for themselves, which I will always appreciate thematically throughout life for people to do that. And she was a beloved community member. What I thought was really a nice gesture was that ECA Plus dedicated their decade, this is their 10th year anniversary, and dedicated their decade to Deborah. So I just didn't think it would be, I didn't think it would be correct to go through 2015 without respecting and acknowledging Deborah's contribution to Easthampton.
Absolutely, very important person to remember this year.
Another contributing agency to Easthampton that had some controversy this year was the Easthampton Community Center. And
That's
I think you provided some coverage to that. So let's talk about that a little bit.
I did. So beginning of May, the mayor's auditor discovered that actually this gift that the city had been traditionally giving to the community center, recently it had been about $20,000 a year. It was actually violating state law based on how they interpreted it. And that, you know, the mayor said that it would have to stop. But what followed was a really, really enormous outpouring of community support for this organization and a real desire to have city leaders try to find a way to make it work. And ultimately it took about 2 months, but the mayor was able to find a way to restore some of that funding. But on the flip side, they got quite a large amount of donations from the publicity that occurred around this. There was a couple of events that were held to raise money for the community center, and then there was a really large number of donations that came through online.
And I think that Seth Lepore actually launched a huge crowdsourced fundraising campaign and raised, I think they ultimately raised more than the $20,000 target. So the $10,000 contract with the city for the summer meals program, and I think the $16,000 in crowdsourced funding actually put them well beyond their target goal. And that's actually one of the things that I love about Easthampton, that I think is really amazing, is that when someone puts it to this community has proven time and time again that they can rise. Like, we can rise to that challenge and donate money and get, you know, people the services that they needed, which I think is not something we could say about all communities, but this one specifically, which I think it makes it very special.
People in Easthampton really do stick together, and they really seem to look out for each other.
And I think that that's a plus, you know? I mean, that's my editorial part. So the other thing that we saw, which beyond the Easthampton Community Center, was a couple of previously controversial programs had come into fruition. And one of them was the 40B housing, Parsons Village.
Right.
Now, I was around uncovering local government in the days that there were lots and lots and lots of zoning board hearings about this 40B affordable housing project. And then I heard a little bit, much less controversial, with 15 Cottage Street, which was developed by Arch Street Corporation and is now being administered by Appleton Corporation as low-income housing, affordable low-income housing. So now that it's all done, what do you think about this 40B project?
You know, I have not heard any complaints about Parsons Village since it opened up. It's constructed, everyone's moved in, and it seems like everyone's getting along, at least from my view as I drive down Parsons Street. But yeah, there was a lot of controversy when they initially tried to get this project built, and it like you said, it was able to get through under state law, Chapter 40B, which allows affordable housing developments to kind of circumvent local decisions. But yeah, I guess we'll see. But for the time being, I have not heard any complaints of the concerns that were raised during that stage of the project.
So far so good. The 40B is enabled. We have now 2 more low-income housing projects that help the city to meet the requirements of its master plan. And
it is a long road. I'm not sure. I know that Easthampton is well below its 10% threshold that's required, and kind of based on my understanding, it's kind of this long road to really get there. But like you said, it's getting toward the goal.
Steps are steps, and that's good. And speaking of steps, now that we're done with housing and we have a little bit more in the city, that means more people and more voters. So we had something happen here in 2015 in the fall called elections, local elections. We did not have a mayoral race, but we did have some very interesting other races. Absolutely. Chris, could you speak a little bit to the school committee race?
Yeah, it was great. Even though there wasn't a mayoral race, there still was contested school committee seats and city council seats. So for school committee, we had 8 people running for 6 seats. And it was really an election that I think focused on the issues. We had a couple candidates forums here at Easthampton Media Studios.
That we did.
We did, and it was great to hear from everyone, particularly about the challenges of kind of competing with charter and school choice, because that kind of seems to be a common theme of concern for city officials. And yeah, for the most part, the candidates they had really substantive discussions, and I think that really allowed voters to make an informed choice about who they wanted to see representing them.
What I thought was really wonderful about those forums was not just that people would talk about what they knew, but also the candidates talked openly about what they didn't know and what they would be interested in learning while executing in that function, which I thought was an incredibly honest and proactive way to kind of move forward. So congratulations to everybody who made it, and run again for the folks that did not get elected, because we need more citizen involvement, not less. The city council race, though, that was another race. We had a race.
That's right. So all the district seats were unopposed, but we did have 6 people running for 4 at-large city council seats.
But we did have a little bit of a shift, because we had an at-large councilor, J.P. Kwasinski, moved over to a regular precinct seat, which was vacated by Dan Hagan, I believe, right?
That's right, yeah. And J.P. had actually, he had kind of started his political career in Easthampton in that seat. So it was kind of a bit of going home for him, representing his district more directly. Mm-hmm.
And you know what I thought was really interesting when I was looking at those election results was sort of the final numbers count surprised me a little bit. And I don't recall them exactly, but I do recall a candidate that I thought would be a shoo-in getting a little fewer votes than I had expected. So, I mean, it was interesting for me to sort of, and probably for them as well, to sort of see this is where you stand with the voters in Easthampton, and this is what was important to them in this particular election year. But also, congratulations to all the people that did get elected to the council. You've been sworn in, and we have high expectations from each and every one of you. And Chris, what seems like should be done after an election is to go out and have a beer.
Absolutely.
That's what folks do in this town. And what I've noticed also in 2015 is that this town, or this city, is in no shortage of breweries.
That is the truth.
So what's going on with breweries?
So early last year, New City Brewery opened up in Mill 180. So that's the second brewery that opened up in that Pleasant Street Mills complex, the other one being Abandoned Building Brewery. So after they opened up, they had been distributing really to places around the state with their ginger beer. Then in August, they opened up to the public with their tasting room, really high ceilings, bunch of beers on tap, really, really, really nice atmosphere, great place to grab a drink. And they've been pretty busy, it seems like. They've had quite a few special events, some live music, some food trucks. Seems to really be bringing people out.
Food trucks, I like the sound of that. It's really cool. And then we have another brewery, a local brewery that's had a little bit of controversy recently, which is the Fort Hill Brewery.
That's right.
I had the good luck, I guess, to stumble in there, not literally, but stumble in there one day, and a city councilor was having a fundraiser. So I got to experience the whole thing and have it be this sort of little microcosm of political fundraiser on top of it. And I have to say it was a very pleasant experience, and everything that they served there was very yummy. So.
Yeah, and although I think a lot of the neighbors on Fort Hill Road agree with you that the beer is good, they weren't too happy about some of the stuff that was happening there, and then that was kind of really spawned months-long controversy that played out on 3 city boards, as the neighbors really questioned whether Fort Hill could be serving pints of beer rather than just offering samples, because their original permit didn't allow for that. It was ultimately resolved, and the neighbors, I think from what I heard from them, they were a little upset with the process that they felt like they weren't being heard from city officials. But at the end of the day, they got hours of public hearings, and they did get a chance to offer their input. So it seems like the public process has really played out.
And has that been resolved? Is it now resolved? Or is it still in planning board?
Well, it has been resolved, but interestingly, there's kind of a test coming up, if you will. There's a nonprofit motorcycle group that's trying to have a motorcycle rally, a charity motorcycle rally at Fort Hill in May. And right now they're trying to get a special one-day permit from the licensing board. They're going to take that up at their next meeting in March, but I know that at the last meeting of the planning board, one neighbor did come out, and he kind of had some concerns about this type of event, and so I think time will tell, and we'll see how the neighbors react to this event should it get permitted.
Well, it's quite an array of things you could see on your way out to Arcadia that day.
Absolutely.
Huh? So, all right, Chris, well, that was it. I think that's the big happenings of 2015. What's coming up in 2016? What do you think are going to be the hotbed topics?
Off the top of my head, the big story definitely, I think, is the future of schools in Easthampton. Right now, they're at kind of a preliminary stage with the state in figuring out whether or not they'll be able to build a new school in Easthampton. It seems like right now the favorite pick is a combined middle and elementary school. So that would do away with the community schools, Maple and Center Pepin, and combine that with middle school instead of having separate schools. But like I said, little bit early to really know what's going on there, but the process is moving, and I think that we should be hearing some more about that in the coming months.
Well, I know that I'm looking forward to it. That is going to be a decision that affects a lot of people.
Definitely.
In the city, and we all will bear the bill of that too. So, but that having been said, Chris, thank you for joining me today. Will you come back and do it again?
Oh, absolutely,
And we'll make up
Kathy.
some other reason that's not year in review.
That sounds
to go over
great.
some more issues. Thank you.
Thanks
for joining us. That was your 2015 year in review from Easthampton Media. Thank you and good night.